This is Louis, and this is going to be at least one of the videos that I do this month. That is a Patron-backed video, so I'd like to thank the supporters that I have that are at the $25 level. And that is Winnie C, Fat Cat, and the legendary Zoltan! Thank you for your support, and I hope you enjoy this video. So this is Louis, and for today I ran out of time to do the scripted video that I had planned. So the question is, now that I'm out of time, what is an easy enough issue for me to cover?
Excuse me, it's me, Jim Webb, your future president. I was promised I'd get time, and I've had no time. Where's my time? Come on, Anderson, lob one at me. Give Jimmy W. his shot and watch him soar.
Okay, Senator, sure. Here's a question. You're the only Democrat up here with an A rating from the NRA. Want to tell us why?
The Second Amendment.
Alrighty then.
So the Democratic Party has been using the Parkland school shooting for a recruitment drive and wedge issue for the 2018 midterm elections. They're calling this AstroTurf campaign March for Our Lives. On paper, this kind of campaign makes sense if you desperately need to rally support for an upcoming election and want access to billionaire-backed political slush funds such as Michael Bloomberg's Every Town for Gun Safety. The problem with using wedge issues is that it naturally angers the opposite side and makes them more active than if left alone. I use the word desperate intentionally because when you go as far as publishing a stub article op-ed in the New York Times by a retired Supreme Court justice outright calling for the removal of the Second Amendment, the reaction to it is goddamn obvious. After all of these not even thinly veiled calls to repeal the Second Amendment, NRA membership went up. NRA fundraising went up. Gun sales went up. And support for the Republican Party went up. There's a reason why Republicans have almost entirely abandoned the wedge issue of gay marriage, and the reason is that it is a political loser. You win some Christian votes you likely already had, and anger the heavy majority of the voting public that view the issue as representing one's moral character. When a majority of conservatives openly support gay marriage, your opposition becomes politically disadvantageous even among your own partisans. Gun control is still a largely partisan issue, however, but if approached with the mindset of a surgeon holding a scalpel, it can be used as a means to win support in some districts. Pay attention to the fact that I'm not even speaking to the efficacy of policy at this point. My point is that wedge issues work in particular districts and not as nationwide moral crusades. Stick all the teenage bull-dyke skinheads you want on television. You aren't winning Congress with this style of campaigning. I graduated from a state university, and I know this to be plain as the fucking day. So then why do it? Well, I already said why. This is a recruitment drive and a desperate attempt to fill the coffers of your party that hasn't recovered 2 years out from a devastating electoral loss. Now that we have my power politics analysis out of the way, let's move on to the actual issue of firearm ownership.
What's wrong with this picture?
The fact that this girl is a literal skinhead? I mean, seriously, I tend to keep my hair pretty goddamn short, but she literally has a shaved head. You know, why do you intentionally make yourself uglier in this way? Girls your age can easily pull off pixie cuts and short hairstyles that Dana here at her age cannot get away with. Rather than try for a punk or bold look, you make yourself look ugly.
What the hell's wrong with you? Look like a Puerto Rican whore. Make me sick.
It's from a CNN town hall on gun violence held just days after a mass shooting at a high school in Parkland, Florida. On one side, you've got the parents, teachers, and students who survived the shooting. And on the other, you've got Dana Lash, a spokeswoman for the NRA who's famous for saying things like,
"They will perish in the political flames of their own fires."
This is what the modern gun debate looks like in America. We're so used to hearing from the NRA that we don't really question it when we see them on TV anymore.
The mainstream media chooses who shows up and who doesn't. There's a reason that I'll likely never be invited at any kind of mainstream show. I don't give a shit what bourgeois mediaites think of me, and because of that, I have them at an inherent disadvantage. Dana, on the other hand, is a professional spokeswoman and conducts herself within the terms that they set.
But talking to the NRA has turned the gun control debate into a confusing, frustrating mess.
Gun control isn't very complicated. On one end, you have the inarticulate morons that should have already won the argument, and on the other, you have the lying, moralizing assholes that cannot prove their illiberal policies actually do anything.
And that's exactly what gun companies were hoping for.
No, no, no. Don't do that, soy boy. Don't make this an argument about who benefits from this, because it's incredibly easy to turn this around and make you the worst actor. Who benefits from alcohol prohibition? Criminals. Who benefits from gambling prohibition? Criminals. Who benefits from narcotics prohibition? Criminals. Who benefits from prostitution prohibition? Criminals. Who benefits most from a firearm prohibition? Criminals. Prohibitionist policy creates black markets, and those markets exclusively benefit criminals. Despite how much I fucking distrust corporations and do not accept capitalism as a worldview, it's just the best economic system, I consider criminals a more immediate societal threat. We can regulate corporations into the ground and they won't shoot back. Criminals, on the other hand, if armed, tend to shoot back at agents of the state.
If you go to the NRA's website right now, you'll see the group describing itself as America's longest-standing civil rights organization.
We're the largest and oldest civil rights organization in America.
The NRA really wants you to think of it that way, because it frames the organization as essentially a public interest group, alongside groups like the ACLU and NAACP.
As a former member, the ACLU is no longer a civil liberties group. I'm not black, so what exactly is the NAACP going to do for me? Fuck identitarian rights groups.
That framing is the reason the NRA pops up in every debate about gun control. If you think of the NRA as a group that represents gun owners, you can't really debate gun policy without them. The problem is
the way they go about this is a charade. It's a fraud. What they're really doing is representing the interests of the gun companies.
And you represent the interests of the cartels. Don't make this silly fucking argument. Money in politics is a very serious corrupting factor, but the NRA is not unique in giving money to politicians. This is a silly goddamn argument.
This is Democratic Congressman Ted Deutsch. He represents Florida's 22nd Congressional District, which is where the Parkland shooting took place. And he is tired of arguing with the NRA.
So debate me on the issue then, you chrome dome faggot. Oh wait, I don't adhere to your bourgeois social norms, so you don't even acknowledge that I exist. The NRA shows up because the media companies invite them as the riskless, politically correct option.
This is an organization that receives millions of dollars every year from gun companies directly, millions more through advertisements.
Yeah, you've probably heard about the NRA giving money to politicians, but we should talk about how much money the NRA gets from gun companies.
Okay, I'm skipping this. Organized crime benefits from your policies. This argument doesn't work in your favor.
The NRA makes millions more by selling ad space to gun companies in publications like American Rifleman.
And where exactly would gun companies advertise otherwise? It's like taking issue with tobacco companies advertising in magazines about tobacco. It's literally a niche. Where else do you expect to find these kinds of ads?
But maybe weirdest of all, some companies donate a portion of every gun sale directly to the NRA. Taurus buys an NRA membership for every customer who buys one of their guns. In 2015, Sturm Ruger launched a campaign donating $2 to the NRA for every gun they sold. Which explains why so much NRA programming looks like a gun ad.
The AR-15 is one of the most effective tools available to protect yourself and your family.
The NRA wants you to buy guns. They don't exist without that interest.
What the? All of this makes the NRA less of a public interest group and more of an industry lobbying group. And that's a big distinction. We're arguing about gun control with a group that makes money when people buy guns.
They're a lobbying group. I don't know, frankly, that there's another lobbying organization that drives the debate on an issue the way that they do, and they're not doing it on behalf of anyone other than gun companies.
That's not true, though, is it? I agree, the NRA does represent the interests of manufacturers in the same way that gaming magazines want everyone to buy... Okay, bad example. The NRA represents the interests of manufacturers in the same way car magazines want everyone buying cars, at least until SJW soy boys and cam whores infiltrate their industry to destroy it. Without the interest, the magazine doesn't exist. Without people buying guns, the manufacturers go out of business or are at least much more dependent on government contracts. The NRA needs the industry and the industry needs the NRA. However, the NRA is not solely an industry PR outlet. The NRA trains firearm owners in safe use and defends their interests as well. You're not wrong to say that the NRA acts politically, because they do, but they also have at least one civil liberty in mind as they operate as an organization.
So anytime the NRA debates gun control, their priority is protecting the product, to deflect attention away from gun sales. They blame violence on things like video games.
Vicious, violent video games with names like Bulletstorm.
While blocking the CDC from actually studying gun violence. Or they say we need to enforce existing gun laws.
We have all kinds of gun laws on the books right now, John. We don't enforce any of them.
While lobbying to gut the agencies that would actually enforce those laws. They blame states for not using the background check system.
Do you know that it is not federally required for states to actually report people who are prohibited possessors?
And then aggressively oppose background checks because, quote, background checks don't stop criminals from getting firearms.
So this was a mess of things that I don't exactly understand. Federal background checks already exist. And to my knowledge, the NRA only has slight issues with the existing system, but otherwise support it. According to the NRA themselves, they've been working with Congress to legislate the entire system since its inception. As far as killing research goes, this is probably the NRA trying to prevent partisan studies from receiving public funding or being introduced into congressional hearings. Every group with a direct interest in preventing research it considers biased is going to try to block it. The opposite side is undoubtedly doing the same. This is politics in action, and nothing is stopping the countless anti-gun organizations from doing their own research using their own funds. Data sets from the government are available for use, and all it takes is one person with knowledge in the area to analyze it.
Or, most obvious of all, they argue the solution to gun violence is buying more guns.
To stop a bad guy with a gun, it takes a good guy with a gun.
No. The bad guy is overwhelmingly likely to have an illegally obtained firearm. According to this very detailed research I found from a completely nonpartisan source, 40 or more % of firearms used in crimes were obtained illegally. Another 37% of firearms used in criminal activity came from a family member that legally obtained it. That leaves 11% of all firearms used in crimes as legally purchased by the offender. Almost 90% of all crimes committed with a gun are not done with a legally obtained weapon purchased by the offender. Maybe the NRA needs to promote the use of gun safes and not giving your scumbag family members access to guns you legally purchased, but we're not even discussing 40% of the fucking problem here.
Yeah, that's a twofer. They get to talk about something other than all of the things that have broad bipartisan support, and they get to talk about something that is ultimately going to benefit the gun companies that fund their entire operation.
The annoying thing is, these distractions work. A Vox study of cable news coverage after the Parkland shooting found that CNN and MSNBC both devoted serious airtime to debating arming teachers.
How do you feel when you hear these proposals to arm the teachers, given what was going on?
That allegiance to gun companies creates a warped view of the gun control debate. The truth is, huge majorities of Americans agree on things like background checks and restrictions on assault weapons.
We already have a federal background check system. Please define what you're fucking talking about, because I don't understand what you mean. With the assault weapon ban, barely anyone is killed with a sporting rifle in the United States. The #1 killer is the pistol, and you're never going to ban them.
And most gun owners, including NRA members, support things like universal background checks. The NRA knows this too, which is why they work so hard to convince their members that the government is coming to take away their guns.
Their goal is to eliminate the Second Amendment so they can eradicate all individual freedoms.
I don't really feel like defending this issue because I'm not an enthusiast, but the anti-gun activists do want to repeal the Second Amendment. After that, confiscation is just a matter of when. You clearly state that you want to live in a gun-free America, and there's only one way to achieve that. District of Columbia versus Heller put in no uncertain terms that Americans have an individual right to possess a firearm. In order to achieve what you want done, the Second Amendment needs to go.
It is always this attempt to whip people into a frenzy. This is just the first step. We're the only thing that stands between you and tyranny. It's nonsense. It's a distraction.
It's also a smart marketing strategy. If you convince people the government is coming for your guns, they'll buy more. Gun sales usually spike after mass shootings. Thankfully, not everyone is falling for it.
They don't deserve to waste people's times with whataboutisms. They don't deserve to waste people's time by changing the way that the conversation's going.
Here's my conversation for you, Ron Weasley. Suck my fucking dick. The debate over the Second Amendment has gone to the Supreme Court over and over again. And the result was the court establishing an individual right. I know my conservative listeners are going to get all autistic and tell me that I'm wrong in saying that Madison wrote the Second Amendment like he was drunk at the time. I understand the intention of civil defense and private ownership being the means of forming a militia, but I don't think it was articulated well enough to avoid the wiggle room constantly used against it. That aside, District of Columbia versus Heller was a cancerous case in terms of the opposition to the Second Amendment representing an individual right to possess a firearm. I mean, for Christ's sake, John Paul Stevens, the justice that wrote the dissenting opinion, is the fucking guy that doesn't even believe the Second Amendment should even exist. Face it, you authoritarian jerk-offs. You lost this fight. You're not overturning this precedent. You're not passing an amendment to nullify the Second Amendment. It doesn't matter how many fucking kids die, because at the end of the day, all that matters is the case law and the Constitution. Neither of those are changing, so give it a rest, okay?
This is Ryan Deitch, a survivor of the Parkland shooting. He was visibly frustrated at the CNN town hall. And he says he started turning down invitations to debate NRA spokespeople like Dana Lash.
We know what happened at the town hall, and we just did not want to give her that platform.
Deitch isn't afraid of debating gun control.
I love to face the opposition. I've been told I'm too nice.
But he says talking to the NRA is different.
They're never going to agree because the money flows one way. Like if Dana Loesch came out there today and then agreed with every single thing that we've been pushing, they'd get a new Dana.
Please God, no, not a new Dana. We've seen this exact thing happen before with tobacco.
Yawn.
Looking back, it's bananas that anyone included the Tobacco Institute in public health debates. But that's exactly what's happening now with the NRA.
There's no question that having the representative for the biggest gun companies raises all of those same concerns.
That doesn't mean we should ignore the NRA. It's still an incredibly powerful industry lobbying group, and we should take that political influence seriously. But that doesn't mean we need to take their arguments seriously. Debates about gun control only work if both sides are genuinely interested in finding a solution to gun violence. But in this case, they're not.
If the way that you're approaching this is about either having guns or not having guns, then having the gun manufacturers there probably makes sense. But that's not what the debate should be. That's not what the debate is. It's about taking action to keep our communities safe.
You don't want that debate because you have approximately zero policy solutions to the problem of illegally obtained firearm possession. And very few people are even pretending at this point that confiscation of legally obtained firearms isn't the end goal.
That's a conversation most Americans agree on, but it's a conversation that falls apart every time the NRA gets a seat at the table.
God! You invited them there. You invited the NRA speaker to speak on behalf of fucking gun owners. Literally just invite someone else. You are the hosts. You are the ones picking the fucking representatives. Just fucking forget it. Invite her, don't invite her, you're not changing the fucking laws without it going to the Supreme Court and getting knocked down just like that, just like all the other laws that have been tried before. The New York SAFE Act, if I recall correctly, went to court 3 times and was changed as many times to not get overturned entirely for violating Supreme Court precedents. Not that the SAFE Act, actually accomplished anything. It pissed off New York conservatives and gun owners, but so long as we have the open-air sewer locals call New York City, picking every one of our goddamn retarded governors, nothing is really going to change. Alright, that's all I can take for today. Thanks for listening.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes. I didn't have time to
You have to give us your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Mark Robinson. I live at 4015 Sassafras Court. That's right here in Greensboro. I've lived in Greensboro all my life. I didn't have time to write a fancy speech. I didn't have time to, I didn't have the resource of an English teacher to sit down and write a speech with at school today and be, brought over here or practice or anything. What I really came down here for is this. I've heard a whole lot of people in here talking tonight about this group and that group and domestic violence and blacks, these minorities and that minority. What I want to know is, when are you all going to start standing up for the majority? And here's who the majority is. I'm the majority. I'm a law-abiding citizen who's never shot anybody, never committed a serious crime, never committed a felony. I've never done anything like that. But it seems like every time we have one of these shootings, nobody wants to put the blame where it goes, which is at the shooter's feet. You want to put it at my feet. You want to turn around and restrict my right, constitutional right that's spelled out in black and white. You want to restrict my right to buy a firearm and protect myself from some of the very people you're talking about in here tonight. It's ridiculous. I don't think Rod Serling could come up with a better script. It does not make any sense. The law-abiding citizens of this community and many communities around this country, we're the first ones taxed and the last ones considered and the first ones punished when things like this happens, because our rights are the ones that are being taken away. That's the reason why I came down here today. Gun show or no gun show, NRA or no NRA. I'm here to stand up for the law-abiding citizens of this community, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You can take the guns away from us all you want to. You all write a law, I follow the law, I'll bring my guns down here, I'll turn them in. But here's what's going to happen. The Crips and the Bloods on the other side of town, they're not going to turn their guns in. They're going to hold on to them. And what's going to happen when you have to send the police down there to go take them? The police can barely enforce the law as it is. As what I see, we demonize the police, criminalize and vilify the police, and we make the criminals into victims. And we're talking about restricting guns? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that when the police department's already hamstrung? You're not going to be able to go down here and take these guns from these criminals. So the criminals are going to hold on to their guns. They're still going to have them. They're still going to break in my house, and they're still going to shoot me with them. And guess who's going to be the one that suffers? It's going to be me. Well, I'm here to tell you tonight, it is not going to happen without a fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean shots fired. I don't mean fist thrown. I mean I'm going to come down here to this city council and raise hell just like these loonies from the left do until you listen to the majority of the people in this city. And I am the majority. The majority of the people in this city are law-abiding, and they follow the law, and they want their constitutional right to be able to bear arms. They want to be able to go to the gun show and buy a hunting rifle or a sport rifle. There are no military-grade weapons sold at the gun show. An AR-15 is not a military-grade weapon. Anybody that would go into combat with an AR-15 is a fool. It's a semi-automatic .22 rifle. You'd be killed in 15 minutes in combat with that thing. So we need to dispel all these myths, and we need to drop all this division that we got going on here. Because the bottom line is, when that Second Amendment was written, whether the framers liked it or not, they wrote it for everybody. And I am everybody. And the law-abiding citizens of this city are everybody. And we want our rights, and we want to keep our rights. And by God, we're going to keep them, come hell or high water.
So that's the end of this video, and I'd like to once again thank my supporters. First at the $25 level, Winnie C, Fat Cat, and the legendary Zoltan. And at the $15 level, it's Matt D, Troy H, Will M, Luykus, and Isaac O. Thank you guys and everyone, including those of you that have donated at the $5 amount or it doesn't really matter to me so long as people are helping me out. I appreciate that, and I hope you enjoyed this video. It was painful for me to make. People usually say to me like, wow, Louis, your scripted videos, I can hardly tell like whether it's scripted or not because your anger seems so real. It's like, yeah, it's not fake. It's not fake anger. It's easy for me to get angry when it comes to this kind of shit because all I do is watch like the original video of the cocksucker on Vox, and then I get pretty agitated pretty quickly because dude, I just can't stand him. I don't even make fun of him like other people do either. I watched, I think it's Lauder Crowder. I watched his video on it, and he just relentlessly mocks the guy for his gay lisp. And he does have like a gay lisp. He mocks him for that. I don't even do that. You know, I didn't even know he was gay. I mean, you know, he's a soy boy, so it's hard to tell. But I like to mock him for being wrong and stupid. But I don't get too out of hand with making fun of his lisp in the way that Crowder relentlessly does. He does a satirical impression of the guy, and it's pretty brutal. But yeah, I wanted to cover this just because it was getting so out of hand with all the moralizing and the ridiculousness of it. And the fact that these people just think that they're going to have some sort of silver bullet to this issue, which they conflate, which is legally obtained firearm usage and legally obtained firearm usage. And illegal firearms are a far greater issue than, you know, your occasional shooting at a school. Yeah, that's bad, but it's an issue of mental health and school safety. That's separate from gun crime, which is what's trying to be addressed here. They're separate issues. And the conflation of the two, like I say in the beginning, I think is just cynical. I think it's just trying to push a wedge issue for the sake of recruitment and getting money. Because the Democratic Party's fucking broke, and they're heading into the fucking midterms. I think it's cynical. I really do. I don't think they expect anything to be accomplished. Trump doing what he did by saying some stupid shit, that was, you know, it was 6D fucking Trump chess as usual. That was a bad mistake on his part. He should not have done that because it scared supporters of his. But I'll just leave it there because I'm sure that I'll have more to say about it in a stream at some point because it's not going away, at least until they have the money they want and the numbers they think they can get from it. In terms of the Democratic Party, that's when it'll stop being an issue, is when they think they've got enough out of the issue. Or once they realize it's actually hurting them in the long run, and very much so. But otherwise, thanks for listening.